PARALLAX-SHIFT.com.
Well, I spoke for a few minutes about some of the other types of 3D photography that interested me and I worked in. When I was in the 8th or 9th grade, my teacher, Ray Tyson at the school at Wilson High, which was near Niagara Falls, which was near Art Park, which is another whole story. But my teacher showed me a stereo camera. It was the one made by Stereographic. I remember looking at that for a long time, trying to really understand what it was about. And then it just seemed like it was a little overwhelming to me. So we talked about taking the photos, but then we ended up kind of just like setting it aside. And then I didn't think about it too much. And then when I was in college, I had a teacher that was really interesting fellow because he was kind of breaking from all the traditional confines of animation. You normally, back then, if you're doing animation, you would have peg holes and you would have a punch, and you would punch a hole in the paper and the paper would fit on these pegs and you would do animation. And he showed me that you didn't need to do all that. You could do it with using the corner of a book, or there's so many other different ways of doing stuff. And then he also showed me about looking at maps with a stereoscopic viewer.
Okay.
And I got really interested in 3D photography from him.
Okay.
And when I said to myself, just before I graduated, I said, when I graduate from school, I'm gonna buy myself a proper stereo camera. So I bought the Realist Standard David White Special Issue. And I couldn't have been happier with it. And we used it for a long time. And we ultimately, my gal, who isn't here right this second, but was a phenomenal asset to me. I found her doing a 3D photo.
Okay.
Because she was one of the models for one of our 3D shows that we were doing with a few friends in New York. And as things progressed, we found more that there were other types of 3D. And then we found out a little bit about lenticular and how that might work, you know. And it took a while working with the lenticular, and we went through a lot with that. But I had working with Bob Munn and R. Anthony Munn, and his wonderful girlfriend, Sarah. And then there was Arby and me and Gary.
Okay.
And then we had depthography. It was Bob's idea that we would try to make a more of a corporate presence, and we did pretty well with it. You know, Bob was like a super genius, and everybody, we all worked together, and it came out pretty amazing. Some of the stuff that that we were doing.
And this was with the depthography group?
Depthography group,
Okay.
yeah, doing lenticular, like we did a dinosaur photo where we made a set, and then we made the dinosaur fit on the set, and I bought the bones from a dinosaur model from the gift shop at the Museum of Modern Art.
Okay.
And I ended up sculpting a dinosaur that was exactly like where, you know, anatomically the bones were. So I ended up having, like, I have a picture of myself in a Polaroid where I'm holding like the bones and the dinosaur.
Okay.
And they're right on top of each other. And then I had some problem because I wasn't really a sculptor, so I had a friend come over and finish the detailing on it. And then we put the dinosaur in the middle of the set that we made, all out sculpting with like pre-Columbian or Precambrian plants and ancient dinosaur stuff. And we took a photo where half the picture was a dinosaur and the other half the picture was the bones. So thereby, this was an idea I had, how that would be cool. And then, you know, Bob and I talked about it a good bit as we were making it, and how cool it was going to be because it was going to be the first time that 3D animated. In other words, normally with the lenticular, you either have 3D, which is like a picture of the Empire State Building, or you have like someone with a girl smoking.
And it was either or.
That one. And it's 2-phase or 3-phase. So our thing was neither of those really. It was half the picture, and when you walk by it, the dinosaur set wouldn't move. And the figure would switch. So it was like the first kind of 3D animating picture.
Okay.
And
What year was that?
well, the first time we did it, it was maybe 91, no, 89, maybe, something like that.
Okay.
Does that make sense? 1987.
That's a year.
Yeah, 79.
Okay.
We remember 79.
We remember-
That's a big year.
That's a big year?
That's when we made Soul City.
Okay.
And that was a really, you know, that was a really good year. And then 89 and 90, that was all good. We were working on some film work with my girlfriend, making this film, What About Me?
Okay.
And then, but in the late 90s, I started working on Fly's Eye again.
Okay. Now, when did you start working on it originally?
Well, originally it was I was working at the Globus facility, which was Globus was a stroboscopic pre-Photoshop special effects factory.
You were talking New York?
It was on 24th Street between 6th Avenue and 5th Avenue. And there I did a tremendous amount of pin registered photography where we would photograph the subject in different heights and different sizes and you know, pull back from the, you know, set the camera on legs, on wheels, and you know, pull it back, and then we would use pin register, tiny pins that are on these little brass plates, and then you can take pictures and sequentially set them where you want, and then you push the little pin down and it pops up a little piece of plastic and you cut off with the X-Acto, and then that's where that is. And then you slide the little tab thing down, and wherever you want the pictures to go to, they would go, and it was like magic.
Okay.
And it
I have a
was,
question for you about Globus. Were they the ones that made the Globoscope cameras?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
The
okay.
Globoscope factory gave me a table and a broom closet to do my Fly's Eye
Wait,
project.
So yeah, the Globoscope, they had like a slit panoramic camera that
Yeah.
you could hold, like a handle that you would hold,
Yep.
and they also made this like compact, like 4x5, like wide angle, you know, kind of like a fixed, like a fixed focus kind of camera.
Yeah, it was architecturally correct Schneider lens, super speed.
Yeah, it's
I
this
have-
like
I have,
polished aluminum thing.
Ronnie, back in a long time ago, gave me 2 of those,
Oh, very nice.
so I could build a rig, which I don't recall ever actually building the rig, but it was that's quite a camera, that one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Super wide, and it's architecturally corrected, so you can take a picture like, you know, like on the ground and
Yeah.
looking up. But interestingly enough, that lens They made my favorite camera they ever made was a 120 roll film camera that had a single slit in it.
Yes.
It traveled in a circle, and it would wind as the slit went by. The film was pulled, and what we used to do, this is strange, is that we used to, I'm not sure who came up with this idea. It might have been Gerard. It was like a really weird one, where we were having jittering problems with the film, where the film would jitter because you're pulling it across a slit, and it was like all that friction would cause it to shake. So what we would do is we would put the spindle, the take-up spindle, we would use a pump, a grease pump, and we would put silicone inside the bearings, and we would pump it up with so it was high pressure in there. I mean, so if you took a needle and pushed in on a thing, it was not a good thing. But if you wanted, it was a very, very weird rig. And then we got involved in making them, these little turning, little, yeah, but it was, yeah, they had the slit, and then we had the isolation. It would, it would keep the vibration down, because you get the vibration, it looks like it's blurry, but it's a weird blurry, so. Having done all that, we took a picture of Mary Lou Retton for the bus, and she was doing her tumbling thing, and we had that camera set up with a slit, and the 120 roll film was being pulled behind it, and then she would do her flip, and as she went across the area, we would follow her with the camera, and with the strobe firing, and having the blur or any of the problems, it made like a stroboscopic image that was like similar to something that would have done by Mary. You might have seen some of the pictures of Mary from France in the 1870s or whatever.
No, I'm not familiar.
He did a lot of like people with swords doing fencing, but like a motion painting in a way, where he would have multiple cameras firing.
Okay.
Similar to Muybridge, but Muybridge was isolating each figure in its own, box, its own frame.
Was this pre-Muybridge or after him?
That's a good question, but I think it was almost right around the same time.
Right around the same time? Okay.
Anyway, Mary is one of my all-time favorite photographers.
Okay.
And he, M-A-R-E-Y.
M-E-R, what's his first name?
I don't know.
Okay. We're gonna have to look at it. Homework!
Yeah, so anyway, so here I am at Globus, and I'm working upstairs, running the studio, or not running the studio, but doing the photography. And they decided to do this project, this 3D project with Roger de Montebello.
And what year was that?
What was that?
When was this? What year was this?
82.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yeah, it's a guess, but it's not bad.
Around.
Yep. And Steve Globus raised some money, and they were working with Roger, and they were getting along. But at one point, they had this issue which had come up where they had made some artwork. They were trying to make a lens array, or like an array of holes that they had already had manufactured plates that had the holes drilled in them.
Okay.
But they found that the holes were not the right size.
Okay.
So they asked me if I could help them figure this out. They wanted to make a sheet, like a Codolith sheet, which is why we're talking about the other type of photography. It was like Kodalith was the high contrast photography, photo film.
I know for the lift.
Right, and so they just kind of said to me, well, what can you do? And I said, well, because we had in Globus, everything seemed to turn or rotate. They always had a turntable or something around. It was like they loved to make stuff like to take like a slit and run a picture by it, and then call it like optical mapping.
Okay.
And that was one of the big things they did. It's all right. So anyway, I took this acetate sheet with all the holes on it, and I said they want to make them smaller, but they don't want to make them. They want to make them bigger, but they don't want them to move. Any of them to move. So I thought about it for a while. Then I put this turntable down, and then I thought I just turned the turntable. I was just trying to figure out, thinking about it. How am I going to do this? How's this going to work? What is it they want? And so I had this turntable turning, and I was looking at different holes, and they were, in fact, as it was turning like this, wasn't just spinning right in the middle. You were getting like more light than you would if you just had the straight light. So then I got a safe light, had aluminum. I went into the shop with Gerard. He made me aluminum disc that made it black.
Okay.
And then we put a tiny hole in there to drill. And then I put it up high in the corner, and I looked at it, and it shined down. And I tried to just guess where it would be, where if that light was right here, how much of the image would it make it small? And I just guessed. And then I turned it on, and then I when I didn't seem right, I stacked acetate and glass. I kept stacking it up until the picture was the actual array of holes was higher from the film, where it looked like it would be match that beam, and that it's coming from the point source.
Light. Yeah,
of the
very
light.
much a pinhole light.
Yeah, and then we let it spin there for a few minutes, turned it off and washed it, then walked out and gave it to Roger, or gave it to someone that gave it to Roger, and he came out and he was just like, what? Where have they been hiding you? You know? And so then we started to work more closely.
Okay.
And that was how I kind of met him, or how we
Started coming together.
started working on this project. So then he pointed out to me that they were doing this project for a couple of years, and
And what project was it?
it was the Instagram
Okay.
project.
So this
It
is
was his latest incarnation of integral photography, which he had 2 or 3. Some that he brought to fruition, actually making pictures and so whatnot. Other ones kind of earlier or between that were didn't see the light of day, but more than a couple of them did. And those pictures were quite impressive. And I was happy that I was going to get an opportunity to work with him. And so the first thing we were doing was figuring out how we were going to. We had made was to make a plate, aluminum plate that had embedded in it sapphires.
Okay.
And this plate that had the sapphires in it, it was an aluminum plate, and we used the the compression. There's like a lever, you get mechanical advantage, and it pushes the
So it sets
dye
them
into the bottom, and you have to blow it out real good so that there's no junk in there.
Okay.
And then you press it down, the arbor press, and the arbor press, sets it so that they're all at the same height, because it goes down, and then the lip of the material, is the same place where the
edge of the metal is.
edge of the lens is.
Now,
yeah.
so those are sapphire
So then we had
lenses?
to, each sapphire lens
Okay.
had to be placed in the 2,641,
2,641, huh?
yeah.
That was basically the lens array for the taking part of the camera for
Absolutely.
capturing.
That's exactly what
And
it
those
was.
sapphire lenses, 2,641.
No, the sapphire negative.
Mhm.
They were like concave.
Okay.
And so when you cast the resin into them,
Oh, so this was the
mold.
dye. This was the mold.
this
Okay.
mold, yeah.
This was
yeah,
okay.
and the artwork that they were making
I see.
was
And so basically the sapphire was
what they
used
were using to
to make the lens array out of.
to make the whole camera array.
Mhm.
Yeah, because
Okay.
first they would, but placing those sapphires in
Yeah,
there.
that was just basically like good because it was heat resistant to whatever temperature glass that you'd have
Oh,
to.
no, not really. It wasn't a heat thing. It was the precision of each of those
I see.
points had to be in the same place
Yeah,
to
Because
line
it's
up
a-
with these brass plates.
yeah.
And then I was in charge of reaming out the brass plates so that
Wow.
they would be bigger
Yeah.
and work as the image limiter. You know, there was like a sheet, very thin sheet of brass that was made up of all the pinholes,
Mhm.
which they did that using etching,
Okay.
photo etching,
Okay.
which we even did a little bit at Globus, but that wasn't such a great go.
Okay.
As I recall, we actually did, now that I think of it, make the dot array for the irises by using Kodak, what do they call that? Woo, that's a strange one. The Kodak, not photo resist.
Okay.
Yeah, you paint on the photo, then you expose it to whatever light or whatever you have a negative of, and then it then etches away where there was no
Where was
exposure.
it? Yeah, exactly.
Right, so that's how we wound up with the pinhole
Okay.
array, and then that was the second thing in the layer. The camera was like making a sandwich. First you had the lens, then you had some space that was filled up with resin. Then
Oh,
you
wow.
had the iris plate with the pinholes,
Mhm.
and then you had spacer again. The spacers, we actually cast them, and they had to be a certain thickness so that when we added the very marginal amount of material into the mold, it would fill up the whole thing without having a lot of overflow, but the thing would be completely full. And the plates that we had made would be embedded in there, and then on top of the plate, you would put the next image on brass, which is, that was the image limiter.
Okay.
That as the iris is just gonna shoot out, like, as light has a habit of doing, in every direction. So you wanna have it's like a choker, it chokes the film.
Okay.
So that when it hits the film, it's hitting its neighbor, and it's not crossing over.
Right,
And
right.
burning it out, and it's not having unnecessary black.
You're containing it.
Between-
It's like containing in each cell,
Yeah,
basically.
each cell has to be made to different size, or the same size.
Yeah, yeah.
Using, and we were doing this with photo resist, which was
Okay.
kind of almost insane.
Well,
But
I mean,
we ended up having to ream out every hole anyway.
yeah.
So,
I can't even imagine.
that was a lot of time. I remember thinking when I was working there that, like, I was thinking about my Apple Heart Daisy film,
Mm-hmm.
but you couldn't really, let your mind wander
Because you're doing precision
you're-
work.
You're drilling this, 2,000 holes, and all have to be exactly the same. And any ones that are different is just gonna show up later as a nightmare.
Yeah.
So,
Wow, that's amazing. and this was this for the crystal chrome cameras?
Yes.
Okay, and so how many of these, like, these are for the taking lenses, right?
Yeah.
Basically, and how many of these did you make actually? Because that sounds like an insane, like, how long did it take even to manufacture, like, from start to finish?
Well, we did all the plates together,
Mm-hmm.
so that took maybe a month.
Okay.
I'm just guessing, and but it took a while. I can promise you that.
No, okay.
And the other thing was, what was the other thing? Yeah, that's what I was talking about. How I was imagining, working on my project at home while I was sitting there, like, making all these holes. But it came out good, and everyone moved forward.
Okay.
And then with those brass plates that we had made were used in each one of the cameras.
Okay.
So we made 5 cameras.
Okay, so there's 5 pills?
Well, but the first 2 or 3 were very sketchy.
Okay.
But they did make a picture, there was 3, 4, and 5 that were actually functioning.
Did you make the viewing lenses at the same time that you're making the camera?
We did, but not for any necessarily good reason, except that we were targeting our approach on a show in October at the New York Coliseum.
Okay.
And we were trying to make as many lens screens as we could that was the funny thing about the project, is that it never ever came together until about 5 days before the show.
Wow.
When I was just like at my wit's end, because we had built all this gear
Yeah.
and it was all supposedly working, but it just wasn't happening. And I had made an optical bench in a way, but not really a bench. It was like a series of tiers. There for making the lenses, so that we could we would turn dials and it would lift the camera away from the image, because
Okay.
there's something about the crystal chrome process that we don't have in Fly's Eye, which is that every picture that was made, you had to flip it. So you had to make the picture, then you had to flip every picture in its own spot. It couldn't move. And that was extremely tricky. So I built an optical printer that had optical knobs on it. We took them from a micrometer. We took the yoke off the micrometer and bolted them on to this rack, this metal plate that had the camera. When we made the regular 5 cameras, those were ones that were for shooting.
Correct.
There was another camera that was used for flipping.
Oh, wow.
And that camera didn't have any film, any more resin on the back, because the film never lined up to it. It stayed away.
Okay.
But it was bad for a couple of reasons. Another air to glass surface, which every time you do that, you get diffraction.
Okay.
Other problems. You don't want to have that. You want to either be all air or no air, or all mineral oil, or whatever you're using. I mean, but
Did you ever use mineral oil or liquids as a filler in this?
a little bit, but it was not working so good.
Yeah, because there are some historic lens formulas that there's like the Sutton water lens. Have you ever read about that?
Yeah, well, you've heard of Hart Perry. You know Hart Perry? He was a holographer, and he had a holographer, small museum in Soho, and he took a picture, full color holographic picture of the circle line.
Did you say John Perry? Or
No, Hart.
Hart Perry.
H-A-R-T.
He was the
It was the fact that it was moving.
the hologram gallery in Soho.
The Museum of Philosophy?
Yeah, museum of
Okay.
philosophy, yeah.
What was he saying?
Museum of Philosophy?
Yeah, what about it?
Oh, no, we're just trying to
Oh,
figure out.
that's where we showed Soul City.
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah?
showed Soul City
Oh, that's
at the
funny.
Museum of Holography
That's so funny.
in February on my birthday in 1979. And like, that was a pretty good day. But it was a little stressful because me and Barry was my good friend at the time, at the school, we made such a deal about getting the film and making sure that all the lockers were closed and everything. Are we out of here? Are we leaving? Are we going? And then we get to the venue, to the museum,
Yeah.
and there's like a line around the block. Because we had sent out this, we made a Xerox flyer, color
You
Xerox
did good
flyer.
promoting.
Yeah, but it was kind of the talk, people were talking about it.
Yeah.
And I realized once I get there that we had left the movie
Oh, nice.
on
Nice,
the
nice,
floor,
nice.
right in front of the
Wow, are you-
locker. So I went to, I borrowed $20 from somebody because I never
Took
had
it down,
$20. And he gave it to Barry and said and it was before we had phones or anything,
Yeah.
so I think he called me from the cafeteria phone and said, no, I actually have it.
Oh,
And
okay.
then,
There you
because
go.
he called the museum, and, it's a call for Henry. I was like, so you got the film.
Yeah,
I mean,
bring it over.
so anyway, that was at the Museum of Holography, but Hart's Museum was a little different. It was a little gallery, but the Museum of Holography, they used to have events every Thursday night,
Okay.
and I would like to go there. I like that picture of Gabor. You ever see the one that's like, it's as big as that freaking window. It's huge. And it's a pretty cool, but anyway, we were talking about Hart, and because we're talking about fluid lenses, Hart was famous for making this giant meniscus lens using mineral oil.
Yep.
He made like a 4-foot, that's how he got the circle line down into 35 millimeter film.
Yeah, the only time I've seen that, I saw that at Dr. Laser's studio when he was making holographic stereograms, basically. So he would shoot. He had like machine that would just like move the film, and he would shoot everything through a big curved mineral oil filled piece of plexiglass.
Yeah.
Looked like a big block that was like a half a circle. And,
Right.
yeah, that was the only time I've ever seen like a real mineral oil lens.
Yeah, well, that
Yeah.
was similar to the one that Hart had done.
So what you got there?
Well, we're not doing holography.
Nope,
and,
nope, we're doing integral imaging.
Yeah, we didn't talk that much about oil lenses because they relate necessarily
Yep.
to the next part of the conversation, but we went over it a little bit. We were talking about making this camera, which we were making with sandwiches of resin or resin with precast slug. You know, there's like some number of like 78,000 thick or something.
Okay.
And
That's pretty thin.
yeah, so it's more probably 780 is what it would be like. You know, like way in the below the 1/8 inch, really.
Yeah.
And we would make these clear plastic, because when you glued it in with the other material,
That would take up some space.
it would end up settling in to be exactly what you could predetermine the thickness, which would differ if you wanted to have, if you wanted to change like the back of what the lens is seeing. You would.
Yeah, the distance of that.
Yeah, the thickness of that little sandwich plate
Makes all the difference.
made all the difference. Yeah, so we would make a bunch of different parts and
Just to
then
try it.
assemble them, and then we had the large piece of glass came down, and then we took brass and covered sprayed the brass with glue, and then glued rubber, foam rubber like neoprene from a wetsuit.
Yes.
We would glue that to the rubber strips, and then the camera would come down and kind of nestle between the rubber strips, and then what little excess material was there, you just scrape off.
Okay.
And then the thing would set up overnight.
Okay.
And then,
And then you'd have a full camera in the morning.
well, yeah, you'd have that portion of it, then you had to go and do another whole operation onto the one that you'd already just lived through the day before.
Okay.
It was a little,
It sounds like a
Stressful.
process, man. Yeah.
it was stressful, cause,
Okay.
but it was good too. It was like, I wouldn't, I wouldn't wanna do it
You're
again.
not going back?
We've done things to simplify the fabrication.
Okay. And you're
And
talking about fly
one of the
tying.
things that we did is we used a computer, which allowed us to do things that we couldn't do
Okay.
in 1983.
Yeah, I guess, yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it was like surprising what you can do with these computers.
Still
these days.
is.
Especially, but prior to that, just, no, actually kind of concurrently, or actually in the past, but not so distant,
Mhm.
we were trying to, I gathered a new group of people, and we were working with one of Roger's cameras, a number 5, and we made a new screen mold because those molds had cracked and withered and they were just done.
Okay.
And we also wanted to make the picture bigger, which we did. That was our agenda, was to make a bigger picture that would work with Roger's camera. And then after we did that for a while, the camera, which was F154, we had to tape every single, and if you're working in a video studio, there's a lot of little green lights. So you had to go around the whole studio with
And
black
block
tape
them
and
out.
block every one of them out. And then we would pull the gate down, and someone would be outside with this like black curtains, duvetine curtains that were covered in water. We would push them up against the floor of the door.
Yeah, so now you
And
get
then-
a light tight room.
Yeah, so we
Light
made
tight
the whole
everything.
studio black.
Yeah.
And then I would be in the bathroom and we'd fit the film on the back of that camera on these pins that I had taped in there. And then we had a punch.
Okay.
And we would punch
So you
the,
register your own film like that.
yeah, but come to think of it, we didn't even use it, now that I think of it. I would corner edge it. We would wedge it to the corner.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because it didn't really matter that much because you're gonna transfer it from in an oil immersion, oddly enough, film to digital transfer. Like we weren't trying to flip the image anymore
Okay.
because when we did it with the
So you're just doing like a regular scan, basically.
yes,
Okay.
and then we flip it electronically.
Yes.
In fact, that was the first program that Keith wrote, was a program that you could make them bigger or smaller, and you could flip them
Who
all.
was Keith?
Keith Lubell,
Okay.
he was my first partner with the Fly's Eye. He was
Okay.
a guy that, he wrote the program that brought us through to digital.
Okay.
And so we were taking pictures with an analog camera from 1983, and I decided to try to find a way of doing that electronically, or with some type of a digital way. Because I was saying F154, and the camera has to be this far away. And if
The
it's
camera has to
not,
be that far away from what?
the subject.
Oh, really? So you're really placing the camera like straight up in somebody's face, or?
Yeah, like
Okay.
right in their face. And
Okay.
then you hit them with F154. Do you realize how much? That's a lot of light.
Okay.
It's so much light that everybody in the room
It goes
is
blind for a
completely
second.
blinded for over 40 seconds. You know what I mean?
You'll get an
And-
integral image into
Yeah,
your
and
retina.
like,
Bring your sunglasses.
Yeah.
yeah, bring them, put three of them together.
Fucking well done.
Henry, is that how you took a picture of Robert too?
What was this?
Robert, did you take a picture of
Yes, we took a picture of Robert.
with that same technique?
Yeah,
No.
Frank?
No, but he was our first non-blinded subject.
Being blinded.
Yeah, no, it was harsh, especially because the person is prepared. Like, for example, we were taking a picture of one of my kids when he was little. One of his friends from school, and the mom comes in, and we're like, it's going to be like really white, and it's going to be, it won't last that long, but to have this sensation of the, you know, the fact that, you know, it will be bright, real bright, and it'll sustain for a while, and it'll go away. So then the mom says, well, that's okay. And then the girl sits down, and we took a pretty good picture of her.
This is a Nico.
No, this was not Nico. This was, Nico was a non-blasted one. But this was a very nice girl. And after we did the photography, the photo, by the time the mom's vision came back, she was like, she went from saying like, this isn't good, to where she was like furious. And she was like a good friend of the photographer, who oddly enough I met at my kid's school. It seems like everybody on my new team were dads at the school. Yeah, I don't know quite how that happened, but it did. And so then she was just about ready to have a fit, and then she just let it go because everything came back. You know what I mean? But it was, but what?
What do you guys use for lighting? And like, I guess how do you get, if your camera's so close, like how do you get your rack to kind of do?
Well, first of all, we borrowed every real professional strobe light we could get,
Okay.
and then we just like kind of rigged them, and as many as they're all pointing in.
Yeah.
And then I would make these cones, like ice cream cone, out of diffusion paper. And it's weird. A lot of people said it didn't work. And it could be, it's not an average setup, but you could get them in there a little tighter.
Okay.
Because if you make the cone, somehow it just, you know, when that light's all trying to go anywhere, it somehow, I thought, got onto the subject. You just want any illumination, any available illumination.
I mean, is it literally this?
Yes, there's no room.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm curious.
Yeah, because I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, how do you even get the lighting in that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, that's what I do. I would make these weird cones for the front of the light.
Yeah.
But you know, at the time it worked, and we got pictures, so that was good. Anytime you're getting a picture,
Yeah.
it's good.
Success. Hold on, I'm just gonna stop